Every year, millions of tourists visit Halong Bay, only to be faced with huge crowds and polluted water. But just 2 hours south of Hanoi, the ancient capital of Vietnam boasts stunning landscapes and historic temples. If you skip this place, you are making a huge mistake. This incredible place is Ninh Binh. When we first visited, we had absolutely no idea of what to expect. But as soon as we visited the Trang An Scenic Landscape Complex, we knew that we had made a great choice. This huge area is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's not hard to see why. The landscape has everything that you would have seen in tourist brochures for Vietnam from over 10 years ago. In stark contrast, our next destination after Ninh Binh was Halong Bay, and the difference was shocking. We had actually booked a whole day cruise to view both Halong Bay and Lan Ha Bay, but we were so underwhelmed by the experience that we decided to leave the cruise after just the half-day portion. Because it's often offered as a day trip from Hanoi, a lot of people tend to dismiss Ninh Binh as a destination, but that's a huge mistake. There is so much to see and explore in Ninh Binh that even 3 days is really barely enough to cover it. Let's start our journey by exploring the most iconic part of Ninh Binh, and that part is often referred to as Halong Bay on land. Trang An boasts beautiful limestone karsts, mountains and lush small islands majestically rising from the water, and it quickly became one of our favorite spots in Vietnam. Combined with historic temples tucked into the mountainsides and fascinating stories of ancient empires and mythical events, I'm sure it'll become one of your top memories of Vietnam as well. The whole area of Trang An is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's also protected by the Vietnamese government. This simple fact means that the landscape has largely survived intact. It also leads to a much more serene experience where you rode quietly around the landscape instead of being on a noisy ship surrounded by hundreds of other loud boats, as is the case in Halong Bay. In contrast, the Trang An Scenic Landscape Complex has strict rules prohibiting motorized boats in order to protect the beautiful environment. When you get to the ticket office, there are 3 routes that they'll ask you to choose between. They are all slightly different, but the biggest difference between them is whether you want more caves or more temples. We chose route number 2, and we found that to be a good balance between caves, temples, and still getting a chance to get a feel for the beautiful nature. The entrance/tour fee is 250,000 Vietnamese dong per person, and there's a maximum of 4 people in each boat. If you want a private tour, you can just buy 4 tickets. Regardless of the route that you end up choosing, the tour will last around 3 hours. During the boat ride, there were 0 attempts at getting more money from us, and tipping is entirely voluntary at the end of the tour, and the person rowing you will not hassle you for it. If you've done some research on Ninh Binh, you've probably heard about Tam Coc as well, which is adjacent to Trang An. The nature is quite similar, and you can also get boat tours around Tam Coc. However, even though the ticket price for Tam Coc is the same as it is for Trang An, it's less organized, and from reading the reviews, there's a lot of attempts to get more money and tips from you. For example, in Tam Coc, the person rowing might ask for a tip just to take a picture of you. And there's also photographers in different boats trying to get you to pay them for taking photos of you. Lastly, they might also try to sell you embroidered souvenirs as you're on the boat ride. Even if they're not trying to hassle you during the tour, they will most definitely push for a big tip at the end of the boat ride. With all of that in mind, I would stick to the official government-run tours, as you're not saving any money by taking the less organized option. To help you find the best parts of Vietnam, we've created an interactive Google map and travel guide. With over 100 curated locations, including hidden temples, fantastic homestays, our favorite restaurants and street stalls, this map will help you get the most out of your Vietnam trip. Our personal tips are also included in each map pin. You can download the map directly into your Google Maps app to find the best spots at the click of a button. You'll find the link in the description, or you can scan the QR code on screen. Our next stop in Ninh Binh is almost equally as impressive as the Trang An River Tour, and it sits at the top of a hill with panoramic views. This is the Bai Dinh Pagoda. Despite what the name might suggest, it's a lot more than just a single structure or pagoda. In fact, it's the largest Buddhist temple complex in all of Vietnam and Southeast Asia, covering over 80 hectares of mountain and forest. Beyond just the sheer size, Bai Dinh Pagoda also holds several other records. For example, at almost 3 kilometers, it boasts the longest Arhat corridor in all of Asia, with 500 statues on display. Each statue has a unique expression reflecting the different ways of attaining enlightenment. If you prefer your records to be a bit more monolithic, the Bai Dinh Pagoda complex also houses a 100-ton bronze Buddha statue inside the Dharma temple. Beyond these impressive records, you'll find numerous temples and halls spread out throughout this complex. Some of the temples date all the way back to the 16th century, and others are a bit newer. Each temple reflects a different aspect of Buddhism, and you'll find ancient relics dotted throughout the temple complex. Because the area is so huge, most people opt for the ticket that includes using the electric shuttles to take you around the different parts of it. That ticket will cost you 300,000 Vietnamese dong per person. Even with the shuttle service, you can easily spend at least 3 hours exploring this vast temple complex. If you have any questions about visiting Ninh Binh, let me know in the comments and I will try and answer every single one. We've talked about 2 of the biggest sites in Ninh Binh, and whilst they are absolutely worth seeing, I really recommend that you take at least a day to just explore the countryside on your own. We rented a scooter from our hotel, and with a full battery on our phones and a very vague idea of where to go, we set out to explore the area around our hotel. It ended up being a really fun day of exploring, as we discovered temples carved into the mountainside and beautiful rice fields nestled amongst the limestone mountains. We also came across what I thought was an abandoned tourist area with a huge lake, but it actually turned out to belong to a small restaurant. Nevertheless, the area did make for some great sunset photos as I took the risk and walked out across the lake using the half-rotten boardwalk to get the best shots. This next site features both a cave and a mountain, so you can get incredible views of the surrounding area. The site is called Hang Moa Cave, but I would argue that the mountain is the most famous part of this site. Hopefully you haven't been indulging in too many Vietnamese treats on your trip, because to reach the top you have to climb 500 steep steps. It can be a tough walk up the mountain, especially in the Vietnamese heat and humidity, so make sure you take plenty of water breaks along the way. Once you make it to the top, you can climb along the Lying Dragon statue to get the most impressive views of the surrounding landscape. Once you've made your way back down the steps, you can relax in the pretty garden area. There's also a cafe at the bottom where you can get a chilled fresh coconut so you can replenish your electrolytes. After you've recovered your energy, make sure that you visit the Hang Moa Cave. It's not that deep, but it is what the site was originally known for. If you're looking for some great selfie spots, then you can explore the boardwalks that enable you to walk out into the middle of the lotus pond, and you'll get some great photos with the rice fields and mountains in the background. The entrance fee is 150,000 dong per person, and you'll also have to pay a small fee of around 15,000 dong to park your scooter if you have one. Our next stop has a fascinating story behind it. The Bich Dong Pagoda was initially built in 1428, before being lost to the outside world for nearly 400 years. Eventually, a pair of traveling Buddhist monks discovered this beautiful temple that was hidden away from the outside world and nestled into the limestone mountain. Enamored by the natural beauty, they decided to stay and renovate the original temple. They also built 2 additional temples into the sides of the mountain. To complete the experience, and perhaps to create good feng shui, the monks also created the garden and the lotus pond that you see at the front of the Bich Dong Pagoda. There are also 2 caves at this temple complex. The first one is called Hang Toi, or Dark Cave, which features impressive stalactites hanging from the ceiling. The second cave is underneath the mountain, and it's called, and I am really going to butcher this, Xuan Toi Dong. Because of the high water level, you can only visit this cave on the Trang An boat tours. There is no entrance fee to visit this temple, but you can always leave a donation to help with the upkeep. There is, however, a small fee for parking. Don't be fooled by people telling you that if you purchase your entrance ticket from them, then you can park for free. Just head straight to the official parking lot and pay for parking there. This isn't just the case for Bich Dong, by the way. You'll come across this kind of a scam at almost every single tourist spot in Vietnam. Make sure you subscribe for more no-nonsense travel tips that'll help you plan your own grand adventure. The next site is the Hoa Lu Ancient Capital. For a very brief period of time in the 10th century, it served as the capital of Vietnam. Unfortunately, nothing's really survived from that era. In addition, it's been taken over by some fairly aggressive street vendors who like to harass tourists at the entrance. I would recommend that you skip this spot. Or if you want to see parts of it, then you can see them from afar and just drive around the countryside that surrounds it, which is really pretty. Instead of visiting the ancient capital, you should visit our next stop, which, although not as old, is both unique and very well preserved. Phat Diem Cathedral is a bit further away from most of the other sites in Ninh Binh, but if you're up for traveling a little bit, it is well worth the journey. Phat Diem is a Catholic church that was completed in 1891. What makes it so unique is that unlike its more famous cousins in Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi, this cathedral is not simply trying to imitate the cathedrals that are found in Europe. Instead, its design is an incredible reflection of Vietnamese culture, with the towers looking like they were transported from a Vietnamese pagoda. The construction is a unique mix of exquisitely carved ironwood pillars and stone walls. Since its original construction, the complex has grown, with several chapels being added, along with landscaped gardens and a 4-hectare lake. Spanning an area of 22 hectares, it's not hard to see why Phat Diem Cathedral has been called the Catholic capital of Vietnam. There are hundreds of hotels to choose from in Ninh Binh, but I recommend staying in the little village that we did. It's a great location for exploring the surrounding area, as it's fairly central, but at the same time, it's also pretty walkable. Along the main road, you'll find plenty of restaurants to choose from, and if you want some more local options, you can cross the river and head into the main town, where you'll find ATMs as well as some more locally oriented restaurants. There are a lot of little homestays in this village, but I can definitely recommend the hotel we stayed at, as the owner was very friendly and breakfast was included. As always, when looking for a hotel in Vietnam, you need to read the reviews very carefully. A good rule of thumb is to ignore the reviews on online booking platforms, as negative reviews often get removed. Instead, stick to looking at the reviews on Google Maps. Even then, you should sort them by the lowest reviews first, just to see if there's any deal breakers. For the vast majority of people, the best way to get to Ninh Binh is by taking the bus from Hanoi. There are multiple departures to choose from throughout the day, and there's also several companies to choose from as well. So all in all, you can be pretty flexible with when you want to leave. We opted for a VIP shared minivan service, which had large comfy seats that were way better than you would have expected for a bus. The ride is pretty short, and it shouldn't take much longer than 2 hours, depending on traffic. In general, you should expect to pay anywhere between 218,000 to 260,000 Vietnamese dong for your bus ticket per person. If you're a more adventurous traveler and you're planning on traveling around the entire country on a scooter, then your best bet will be to organize that in Hanoi and then drive to Ninh Binh. Almost every hotel will have parking available for scooters, but it's worth double checking before you arrive. You can also take the train, but unless you're a huge train nerd, I really wouldn't recommend it. The departure times are limited and it's also quite slow. The best way to get around Ninh Binh is by renting a scooter. In our case, we were able to rent one at the homestay we stayed at. Ninh Binh isn't the busiest area, but it is still Vietnam, which means that you'll have to adapt to Vietnamese traffic pretty quickly if you want to get anywhere. It is most definitely overwhelming at first, but once you've gotten the hang of it, everything kind of starts to make sense, including the constant honking. By renting a scooter, you'll have the freedom to explore the entire area and find some amazing spots to watch the sunset amongst the beautiful limestone mountains and rice fields. If you want to plan your own little off-the-beaten-path adventure, then make sure you download our custom map, where we've marked the best spots that we found. Renting a scooter is also going to be a lot cheaper than getting a Grab everywhere. On the topic of Grab, if you've never traveled in Vietnam before, then you need to know that taxis should be avoided like the plague in the entire country. They are notorious for scamming tourists, so it's just not worth the hassle when there's a good alternative. Grab is the most prevalent ride-hailing app in Vietnam, and it works the same way that Uber or Lyft does back home. Because the fare is predetermined and everything is paid for through the app, you don't have to worry about getting scammed. Just follow the same rules that you do back home by making sure that the car and the driver match what's displayed in your app. If you're not comfortable driving a scooter, then a lot of homestays will also have bicycles that you can rent. It will take you a bit longer to get around, and you'll probably want to get a Grab for the places that are further away, especially during the hottest parts of the day. Since the landscape and culture in Ninh Binh is so impressive, you might be wondering why there aren't more people visiting. Well, my personal theory is that Ninh Binh is more of an overlooked place rather than an undiscovered place. There are most definitely tourists here, but it's just not as continuously packed as other places in Vietnam. A lot of tour companies will advertise Ninh Binh as a day trip from Hanoi, and I think that leads to a lot of people not taking Ninh Binh very seriously as a destination. In fact, in several Vietnam forums and groups, I've seen people ask whether they really need to bother visiting Ninh Binh or if they should just take the extra day in Hanoi. If you are on the fence about visiting Ninh Binh, you should most definitely take the leap and visit. Since it's such a short journey from Hanoi, you really don't have much to lose, and unless you're a hardcore city person that hates nature, you will most definitely love exploring Ninh Binh. If your itinerary is already packed and you have to cut something out, then I would recommend spending a day or two less in Hanoi or simply skipping Halong Bay in order to make time for a visit to Ninh Binh. Another great tip that'll help you save time and money on your next trip is to watch our latest video here.